Hey, how you doing? It's Patrick Escolas with another Banyan Tire Tracks podcast. I have with me today Brent Hutto of Truckstop again.
Great to be on.
Yeah, he's a sucker for abuse apparently. He's coming on again a year later. How you doing, Brent?
Good to see you, man.
Hey.
I'm a sucker for Banyan abuse. Okay,
Hey,
not
there
all
you go.
abuse, just Banyan
very
abuse. Okay?
specific with the
as long as
abuse
it's you guys, I'm okay with.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let's start off. It's been a year.
Yeah.
I learned way more than I knew about Truckstop last time we spoke.
Yeah,
but what's happened in a year for Truckstop?
Well, customers have a little bit of angst because the marketplace has come back down to normal after a historic marketplace. That's kind of a normal human reaction, and although it's been a pretty normal marketplace, I would say this, Patrick. The thing is that they're just adjusting to a new norm, which is kind of the way it always works in trucking because it goes up and down all the time.
Right.
So it's just the adjustment back to a new normal freight marketplace.
Okay.
The economy's got its own issues and things going on with it, but a new normal freight marketplace, although there's challenges within that too.
And what is that doing to pricing right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, pricing went from a lot per mile. You know, we had owner operators and carriers out there say, well, if I can't get $4 or $5 a mile, I'm not doing it. You know, it's like now the average is like $2.30 a mile. That's the average over the whole marketplace. And so, look, there's good freight to be had. There's always good freight to be had. But you got to know where to look for it, know what part of the country to look for it in certain different times and different geographic areas. So, but pricing has come down to be around $2.33 a mile. That's the overall in-spot market, not the contract marketplace. Contract marketplace is higher.
Right.
But the problem right now, Patrick, is fuel is different, especially for the small player. It's about 58 cents fuel surcharge amount. So that's like if you take $2.33, take 58 cents out of it. You see the real mile they're operating within.
Exactly.
Like you can make money on the fuel surcharge.
Not as much as you were used to.
Well, not as much, yeah. So those things, and then inflation is another problem. That's a challenge for any trucking company.
Right, and from what you've seen, are we expecting 230 to kind of stay where it's at for a minute, or go down or up, or what do we think from there?
Well, what I would say to you is we're in a seasonal time period, in holiday shipping. So anytime there's holiday ship, there's more freight in the marketplace. When there's more freight, the rates go up, but that's going to be like a regular seasonal lift.
Right.
Probably going to be in the same standard marketplace, around 230 to 240 for a little while. And it may go a little lower than that for a short period of time. Then it's going to come back up during the holidays, during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. So, but for the most part, just kind of a Groundhog Day. It's going to be the same. I know. It's going to be the same thing, for quite a while, and really not predicted to come back meaningfully until maybe sometime in 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with that in 2024, as far as meaningful, what does that mean? Is that $1 up? What does that look like?
No, I wouldn't think so. Now, historic averages in our marketplace before the pandemic was about $2.20 a mile.
Got you.
Now that's when fuel was about 37. Fuel surcharge was about 37 cents.
So it's very relative.
Yeah, it's
to,
relative. So we're at $2.33 right now for the average spot market freight. So next year, it could come up some in the rates, but it's unlikely it'll change dramatically. Look, we're not going to go back to the pandemic time frame. That was a consumer-driven change in our market, not a government regulation change or not a normal freight market change. It was a consumer-driven change. So that's not going to happen again because we're not going to go through another pandemic.
Right.
Well, hope not.
Well, right, exactly. Yeah, no one is hoping for that. I agree.
Yeah.
And so with that, and we expect that kind of same margin of, what is that? So maybe $1.60 between where that actually is with the fuel
about $1.80.
$1.80. Okay, yeah.
Which is still profitable.
Better math than me.
That's okay. I am from Alabama, but I can do math. Okay.
Hey, I don't have enough coffee in me to do math this morning, so this is
math was my thing. So I'm pretty good with math.
Good. I'm sure that makes a lot of people feel more comfortable about what you have to say. That's right.
Right. So the thing is, it's that what needs to get, like for instance, and nothing against I throw no aspersions into politics. I just can tell you that administration decisions affect things.
Right.
When our current administration decided to cut off the Keystone Pipeline, we became more beholden to the market forces of what oil is going to cost. When oil is really high, recessions happen.
Okay.
When oil is competitive in the marketplace, recessions don't happen in the United States and sometimes worldwide. So, but the point being is that fuel is such a determinant factor for the small players. For the small players, the big players negotiate it really well, but it's still profitability.
Right.
So, fuel is a big thing, and then inflation. Of course, inflation being, we went through such a long period of low inflation, and our dollar went further. Well, that affects everybody, especially truckers. They buy a lot of fuel. So it's like 70% of their cost. So. But
that makes sense.
It's a big deal. So the fuel and the inflation is a big deal. So get those back in line. Then the profitability, the 230, the 240, the 250 is a good profitable amount. Yeah.
And you mentioned two things that I think in my next kind of question, you talk about the government administration as well as the kind of the costs for those truck operators. So AB5 went through, and so
AB5.
Yeah, so
it went through in California.
Went through California, right, exactly. But
in California.
But as we know, a lot of the nation kind of looks at California for kind of that. How is that working? Is that something we need to utilize or to follow up with? And so that. We know I talked about it with Ann Reinke of TIA last year as they were
She's a great person.
They were still that was still up in the air whether or not AB5 would go or not. But one thing that I thought was interesting was if the engine is 2010 or older,
that's another part of it.
Talk to me about that, because that's a cost.
You got two things,
and with that, so answer that about what your thoughts are, and then I got a kind of another follow-up question. Is how many trucks out there are affected by that?
Oh my goodness! Oh well, that's going to be a tough one for me to answer, but I'll maybe give it.
I'll take generalities.
I'll give it a horseshoes and hand grenades answer maybe. So on the AB5 issue. That is not a new issue. It sounds like a new issue in our industry, but it's not. The federal government has been coming after, but that's not fair, has been wanting the trucking industry to follow the independent contractor rules and regulations for a long time. I've been in this market since '98. It's a pretty good time. That's a pretty good while. And it's always been a threat out there on the independent contract. I always wondered why big fleets called their leased owner operators independent contractors. Well, they're owner operators. Why don't they call them owner operators?
Right.
They call them independent contractors because they want to make sure that they're emphasizing that their leased owner operators meet the independent contractor laws. Right. So you mentioned California.
Yes.
Right. So California is a very unique state because they run they're able to run their EPA differently because they have their own EPA. They have their own and they're able to run their approach to a marketplace very different. And so this is why California is so important in the overall transportation marketplace. This is the old saying, what happens in California eventually comes east.
Right.
Because California is a unique state for a lot of ways in which they vote, in which way they look at things. They're very environmentally conscious, more than the rest of the nation is. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. How does it apply to industry?
Right.
Because last time I checked, industry is pretty important in states.
I'd say so.
But the AB5 laws, when the Supreme Court decided we're not ruling on this, we're going to push it back to the state. It meant because it was passed once already in California, it meant it went automatically into law because it had already been passed. So it was in limbo because it went to the Supreme Court. So once they refused it, went into automatic law. So you've got about 50,000 owner operators in California. Most of them are on the drayage side. Because there's the two biggest ports. Two biggest ports in,
that makes a lot of sense.
In America are in California.
And then the other, because California's giant in of itself.
California's big, absolutely. Lots of population.
That's right.
Most electoral votes. But here's the point about AB5. They've passed it.
Sure.
There are approximately 17 other states in the United States looking at passing AB5 laws, and it's all for one reason. It's tax reasons. You get more taxes if they're employees than they are if they're independent contractors, because an independent contractor is an independent business. We are fundamentally at Truckstop, we're against AB5 laws. We're not against the government trying to regulate things. That's a good thing. FMCSA is great.
Sure.
But they're not in this. This is a state thing. They push it back to the states. But the AB5 laws change the status of the business that has chosen to operate that way. So they've chosen to operate as a leased on owner operator or an independent contractor.
So it's kind of that imposition of will.
Well, so if you're a leased on owner operator working for another fleet, California says you can't do that. You're really an employee because your business isn't any different than the business you work for. And that's where it doesn't meet what's called I think it's called the B prong. It doesn't meet that. And so this is what's going on. So so that's changed things fundamentally in California. But there has been not a whole lot of enforcement in it so far. So it hasn't really had a huge impact, but it will. As more states come along that do this, then you'll find there'll be more pressure on the system. Now, the unique thing is that right now it really only reflects and affects trucking in California. because all the other people that have independent contractors that are like hairstylists and contractors, they were all excluded from the law.
Really?
Yeah, totally excluded from it.
Oh,
it's amazing.
I would have thought it would be more of a blanket reform or
not
legislation.
At all. The Uber and Lyft drivers excluded.
Really?
Yep. Uber and Lyft did a very good job of litigating that and got themselves excluded because they're all the Uber and Lyft drivers are independent contractors. They don't work for them, not employees. So my point about this is a long answer. You think, AB 5 can fundamentally change things because you're going to take if you look at the pie of owner-operators that are out there, about 60% are leased on to another fleet.
Okay.
If they can no longer be leased on and they have to become employees, changes the dynamic.
It's going to limit their options.
It can limit their option, or it forces them to operate their business differently. So it's interesting. There's a lot of talking conjecture on this. Not much to talk about now from an effect standpoint, but certainly something to look at going forward.
Okay.
And then you asked me another question about how many the 2010 thing.
And that kind of goes.
That's another really big issue.
And is that driven kind of from, as you talked about, California has its own EPA? Is that more of it from a green standpoint that they're doing that, or is there a safety aspect to it too?
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
There's a big part of our population that just believes that we need to have the absolute cleanest air possible. Nothing wrong with that.
Fair point.
But how you go administering that's very difficult because you can't really administer it onto the driving normal consumer public because it's very fragmented. It's easy to go after the trucking companies because they're all aggregated under a certain number of companies.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to go, okay, well, you can't operate unless your truck only puts out this much diesel particulate in the atmosphere. That was all the regulations. It was called the 2010 CSA rule, not CSA, the 2010 EPA rule. Started in California, but it was adopted federally.
Gotcha.
And so that made all trucks.
So this is outside of AB 5.
No, this is not related to AB 5.
Okay,
not related at all. It's just in the same state.
Understood.
Because California's EPA.
Just another example of California
leads everything else. And so what happens is they want trucks to be as clean as possible. Everybody does. There's no argument with that.
Fair point. Yeah.
But it's like, how do you make it happen? And so most owner operators, the small players in the market, don't own new trucks.
Right.
They don't transition their trucks every 3 to 5 years.
That was kind of my thought.
They'll keep them for a decade.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of grandfathering and things like that go into this.
That was going to be my next.
Eventually, it catches up.
Okay.
So it will have a mark on the industry, not immediately, but eventually it has a mark on the industry because trucks and truck engines can run a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
And you think with that, both what we've just talked about with the truck engines and AB 5, that there might be less operators willing to continue? If you're on the cusp of, is it time to maybe put the keys down or what?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that this industry has been at about the same number of trucks for the last 20 years I've been in the industry.
Really?
It's about 3.5 million. It grew some during COVID because it was a good market to get into.
Right.
But I don't see fundamentally because freight's going to continue to grow. So there's always going to be opportunity. It might have some ones that don't want to put up with it.
It might be a trade-off of numbers. Some people drop off, but some people jump in.
So, but what you're going to find is that as the marketplace becomes more efficient, it will be more of a job that more people like because it won't be as difficult to do. In other words, most cross-country full truckload haulers are out 14 to 21 days a month. They're away from home.
Right.
So if you were gone half that much, more people would be attracted.
Right. Exactly. It would be less of a hardship. Yeah. No. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Appreciate you got both of those. It took us a while, but you were very thorough in your answer too. So I appreciate that. And then with Truckstop and with truckload in general, one of the biggest things that's come up in the past year, and as we talk to Trucker Tools, is communication and visibility. From a brokerage, from the shipper. What are you seeing within that, and what new things has Truckstop been identifying?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think maybe the reason that visibility was high, the need for visibility was high, was basically to know where the freight is. Because in the pandemic, it was hard to get things moved, and that was very difficult.
Yeah.
But now...
You'll get it when you get it.
But now, it's pivoted, Patrick.
Okay.
It's pivoted to... There's some fraud happening in the industry. So that's a big focus. It's one thing...
Now is this new fraud or just a bigger number of it?
It's... What do you mean?
Is this something that's always been going on?
Yeah, no, fraud has been a part of our industry since day one.
Right. But is this a new version of it?
As it's become more, as our industry's become more automated, it has allowed more cyber crime to go on.
Okay.
Stealing of identity, because when you can do it electronically, you can do it at a bigger scale.
Yep.
it's not just I went to the truck. The bad guys went to the the truck stop parking lot, and I mean truck stops, not my company, but the truck stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And they knock the guy out, knock the truck driver out, and they steal his truck. Okay,
right.
That's not the right. I'm talking about the stealing of freight payments and the stealing of cargo when it's delivered to somewhere by the owner-operator or by the carrier thinking that's the place it's supposed to go, but it's not.
Oh.
So because when you can electronically change things, then you can direct things in different places. So it's not the old school, the wild, wild west. It's more surgical now, but it's increased because these players use electronic means to get it done. So what we've done as a company is we've really... First off, we've communicated much more broadly. Starting in May, we had this thing called Fraud Protection Fridays.
Okay.
And so we were communicating to as wide as we can in the industry. And I'm on a lot of interviews going, hey, what's going on with Fraud Prevention Friday? I'm like, hey, we're doing this on how to protect yourself against identity theft, and how to protect yourself at a fuel pump, all different things in the marketplace. But the thing we've done is we've taken systematically, because we have so many customers, and we've actually taken our system to be able to pick out the bad guys a lot better.
Oh, really?
And protect them. Absolutely. Because we have such a deep contact with the customers. We have a system called RMIS that has about 350,000, a view into 350,000 carriers. And so making sure that they are who they say they are, that whoever they're working with people who they are, who they say they are, and really purifying the information, trying to keep the bad guys out as best as possible.
And is that just some sort of a high-end credentialing system or dual factor authentication? What does that look like?
All of that, okay. Every single piece of it. Just like we consumers go through that. I put in my password, then they say, hey, well, can you get me?
Sure?
Can you visualize? Is this really you? We're going to send you a pin. All of that plays into this. Okay. Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. Slows trucking down, and trucking doesn't love this, but they also love to get paid, and they love to be protected. So it's going to be a part of our normal freight experience going forward, because nobody likes when the bad guys win.
And it kind of makes sense because we've seen the adoption of that dual factor in just about everything. It started with a bank pin, but now it's every website or app you go into, you really have to prove you are who you are.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, exactly. And I mean, so do you see that being kind of a good first step, or do you think that's the last step?
Oh, no. It's ongoing.
What else? What else needs to happen?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, great question. Well, it's like everything. You plug one hole and somebody drills another one. So you just got to keep plugging holes. It's like anything. It's like if you're at home, or any business has had to step up their cybersecurity, and it's not if it's going to happen to you, it's when it happens. It's when, because it's just part of the technological world that we live in. Right. And it's incumbent upon great companies like yours and great companies like mine to be the front firewall, the front wall in between the bad guys.
And we've got that data and the technology and the access to it, so it's
but it's ongoing, Patrick. Okay. It's ongoing. It never stops.
And I was going to say, does it just keep being that plug that hole, find another, or at a certain point do we start getting more proactive, or that's tough to do?
No, proactive is absolutely, you've got to be proactive, because there's ways in which to protect yourself to make sure that if you're a carrier, that all of your provable identity is immediate, and if you're a broker, your provable identity is immediate. And I talk to a lot of owner-operators, and they're always asking me, how do they protect themselves? I talked to an owner-operator in the Denver airport on Monday morning when I was flying to another event before I came here.
Okay.
I met him. He just got back from Hawaii, and he said, hey, I haven't gotten paid on this $2,500 load. I've been trying to chase this guy down for 2 months. And I'm like, it's unlikely you're going to get this.
I was going to say.
I think you've been defrauded. I said, but send us the information.
Right.
He had just become a Truckstop customer.
Okay.
It's really funny. He kept looking at my phone because I have a sticker on the phone. He kept going. He goes, do you work for Truckstop? And I go, I sure do. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You're an owner operator? He goes, yeah. He goes, so he said, could you help me with this? I go, well, we didn't do that. That wasn't one.
First off, that's not why I'm traveling first class today. No.
I'm business class. But no, the thing is that we want to be helpful no matter what.
Right.
And so when an owner operator needs help and I see there needs to be help, we're going to help no matter what. So he's going to be sending me the information. I'm going to see at least if we can track it down for him.
Right. Yeah, that's real nice. I'm Chief Relations Officer. That's my job. Getting out there. That's right. That's awesome.
I did buy him breakfast too. His name was Sylvester, and his wife's name was Devin.
Okay.
And they run a company called Family Saddle Express out of Kansas City.
I like that
Great
name.
company.
That's
yeah,
cool.
great company.
That's awesome. That's a great coincidence too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we just signed up. I'm like, oh, there you go,
Dude,
talking to the brass.
I see customers. What's a big industry? I see customers everywhere. That's so fun.
It's still nice.
Yeah.
And plus, it's just you're traveling all over,
Yeah,
and
I do.
it's all across. So there's going to be a different perspective from everyone too. And with that, so I guess so. I kind of asked the questions I was looking to hear about here. What's something we didn't talk on that you have as a message, either from Truckstop or that you're seeing in the industry here?
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing to do is, and it's a little bit like what we talked about this morning here at the conference. The conference has been great. Really appreciate being here.
Thanks. Yeah,
it's just
be
about
here next year. Yeah,
absolutely.
Brent will probably be here. He's 2 for 2.
I hope so.
That's right.
Got to come back for the trifecta.
That's right.
So what I would say is, in any business, you always want to look for a competitive advantage.
Okay.
Find the companies that can give you a competitive advantage from a systematic standpoint, and take those systems and adopt them in to your company, and then use your great talented human power to solve another problem.
Right.
And so to me, that's where it's whether it's not just go buy a piece of technology because I'm a technology company and you're a technology company. It's deploy your resources the best.
Okay.
And so we're in a marketplace that's a normal market. We're not in a horrible marketplace. Yes, it's not what it was a while back during the pandemic,
and it might never be. So we need to reevaluate if you're basing it on that.
But I would say, I think my biggest advice to any player, whether it's a one truck owner operator or whether it's a $1 billion brokerage company, is you've always got to be investigating ways to grow. Now is a good time because you can exhale in the market because the marketplace isn't running like crazy like it was during the pandemic. So now you can figure out strategy, figure out what you need to employ to be able to grow in the future because growth is everything.
And I think that's a great point because, just getting the technology by itself isn't enough.
No.
You've got to make sure you're using it. And I think something you said kind of resonated well with me is that a lot of times you go out, Banyan will talk to people that don't use technology, and someone's afraid it's going to take their job because they're doing it manual. And to your point, don't use it to replace people. Use it to put in place so those good people can work on other tasks that you got to have hands on the wheel for.
Well, I know everybody's afraid of AI, like it's going to take over and be the Terminator or something, but it's not. We've been going through a technological advance for the last 30 years in the United States.
So no Skynet. All right.
No Skynet. There's more people employed or can be employed. There's more jobs available.
Yeah.
The jobs just change. And so there's always opportunity for anybody that wants to work hard. That's the American way. It's what we do as a country. So I don't worry too much about that stuff.
Okay.
And look, I'm 56 years old. I've had to reinvent myself as a worker multiple times.
Right.
And if you want to stay successful, that's the key.
You kind of have
always
to keep
look
changing.
Just reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
Find ways
Adapt.
to fundamentally
absolutely adapt and overcome. Right.
Well,
yeah, that's right.
The old Gunny Highway thing.
That's right. Exactly.
All right.
No, but that's awesome. Hey,
cool.
Brent, thanks for being with me today.
Well, great to be with you guys.
Hey, thank you. It's been another episode of Banyan's Tire Track Podcast. Thanks for listening and watching, and stay tuned for more. Thanks again for Truckstop and Brent Hutto. Thank you very much, man.
Appreciate it.